Without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Margaret O'Rourke Kelly as Dora Hall Stockman.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I do appreciate the time you've spent, and let's see if this is going to work, these slides. So we'll see if we can go to the next one. I'm hoping for music. I think we have a technical difficulty. We don't have music now. We waited and we waited. I thought this was indicative of what Dora might have carried as she went on her rounds visiting all the counties in the state of Michigan. So I made this little bag for her, and I presented Dora about 20 times, at least 20 times throughout Michigan and in other states. And it's just been the delight of my life to have had the opportunity to find someone who has been long lost in the archives. She was recognized in the Women's Hall of Fame in 2006, and it was a delightful hope. I had nominated her once, a colleague had nominated her once, and finally another person nominated her. But it took a long time to get her into the Women's Hall of Fame. It wasn't that she wasn't wonderful and hadn't done all kinds of things. I think it had to do with her political persuasion. And while we're continuing to set up, I'll just fill in the blanks. Well, a long time ago, I wrote a book for children, farmer children. It's called Farmerkin's Farm Rhyme. But in our trip through time, this book is now 100 years old, over 100 years old. And I wrote it for my small son. And it's called Farmerkin's Farm Rhymes. Farmerkin, farmerkin, happy little boy, with your wonder world brimming full of joy, running through the dewy fields, playing in the brook, finding nuts and berries, knows each mossy nook, friends of all the animals, learning how to grow, digging, planting, sowing, watching flowers blow. Farmerkins, farmerkins, in a wonderful world of joy, who would not wish to be a little farmer boy? Well, some of these poems were set to music and distributed to people in Michigan to use in their classrooms. And while we're at the Grange Hall, I wanted to tell you that at the Grange Hall, I often wrote plays for young people in the Grange who were learning to participate in the Grange. And I wrote plays for them. And one of the plays I wrote was The Coming of Happy Valley Grange to Hardscrabble Hollow. Now you might think this sounds a little bit like Green Acres, and indeed it was, because it was rough times for the farm families. And so I would be writing plays for the children of the Grange so that they could be on equal footing within the Grange farm family. Now the Grange was a farm family fraternity, and it was unique in the sense that while there were other fraternities, it was a family matter, and men and women shared equally, and you could join, as this membership card shows. You could join, as Dora's parents did when she was only 3 years old. People would go to the old Grange halls, their families would take their buggies, and the whole family would go, and there'd be little side rooms where the moms could put their children to rest during the activities, that is the babies. But they wanted the children to be and see themselves as full participants in family life farming. And one of the stories, as I told you, was this Coming of Happy Valley Grange. Another story that she wrote, another play that she wrote, was Dr. Mary's Prescription. This was a cautionary tale about not being taken in by patent medicine. And she wrote other plays, as I mentioned, a few of them, and she wrote plays and poems and songs. She wrote Bible stories. She was an amazing woman. And during this history of the Grange, now Oliver Hudson Kelly, no relation to my name, although it is an amazing coincidence, he had started, oh my goodness, we're fast ahead here. It's time for me to change. I'll be right back. Well, thank you so much for this honorary doctoral degree. I am so pleased. You know, what made it all possible was membership in the Grange. The Grange is marching, Doree. The Grange is marching, the Grange is marching. Yes, victory indeed for all the Grangers. Well, let me tell you a bit about how I happened to receive this honorary doctorate. What did I possibly do that made it possible for me to become not only a friend of the farmer, but a friend of people that elected me to serve them? I was born in 1872 in a log home in Marilla Township in northern Michigan near Traverse City. In 1874, my parents joined the Grange, so fairly early on I was integrated into this social, cooperative life of community. Now I passed the teacher's exam at 14 and began teaching at age 16 at 12 years. Now, because I had passed that teacher's examination, an editor from a nearby paper came to the farm 12 miles from Bear Lake. And if you think about Michigan, it's up in this area. Because I had taken that teacher's exam, that newspaper asked me to be a correspondent for the Bear Lake Beacon. I have been writing for a variety of publications ever since. Now, for a long time, I had been part of the Grange. And so what do you say? What about this Grange? Isn't it all passé? Why in the world would anybody care about the Grange? Well, following the Civil War, the patrons of husbandry were interested in becoming a powerful lobby in Washington, D.C., on equal footing with the manufacturers who had thrived during the Civil War, well, in the North anyway. Farmers could no longer afford to see themselves as isolated farms, but they saw that they needed to get together. And it became clear, in order to fight that middleman, they must get together, they must form cooperatives, and that's what they did. And as I mentioned earlier, that this is similar to other fraternal organizations, and the organizations are would not admit women. Yes, they had their spheres, but you had to have an equal number of men and women holding office within every Grange community. Now, when you go down a road, you're traveling throughout Michigan or any place in the United States, and you see a thing called a Grange Hall Road, and you think, Grange Hall Road, haven't I seen that word before? Yes, because there were Grange halls in abundance throughout the United States following the Civil War. Now, they did a great job of organizing, of helping the family. And some critics have said, oh, they did their job so well that they drove the farmer out of business. Well, I'm not so sure about that. But I must say that it enlivened the family. Prior to the advent of the farming community, farming fraternity, women led such lonely lives of existence out on the farm. It was so bleak, very, very bleak. It was altogether a terrible way to live. They didn't make a lot of money, but once they got into these farm family fraternities, their troubles could be shared and they could unite together. Now, even in the 21st century, I am told that there are still Grange halls abounding. There's one even on Saline Road, and it has the original floor for dances. Yes, the Grangers did a lot of things. The farm family fraternity became this bedrock, and my family went right along with it. Now, we lived at a corner near Lemon Lake, and we weren't that far from Manistee, and I would sometimes be asked to take the wagon and drive into Manistee to pick up our mail, and that was a great adventure. And I went to school in a one-room schoolhouse, but then I married. I married my dear husband, and Francis, and we had quite an adventure. We moved to Arcadia. We started a mercantile business, and I made hats, but we had this disaster of working in a logging camp. Now, we were doing all the cooking for the loggers because of, as you know, Michigan was thriving with deforestation, as we call it today, but that was a rough time to see all those men, and that certainly set me on the precedent of no liquor, and the trouble that people got in as a result of liquor. So that left a real remembrance for me, very negative connotation for that. Now, I was always interested in education. My family didn't have a lot of money when we were growing up, but whatever they could spend, they spent on furthering my education. And all of our children, all of the family education. So I went to Benzonia Academy in Benzonia, Michigan, and graduated from that institution with a normal degree. So I became a teacher. It was really wonderful. Time went on, my husband went out to California for his health. He went out west, and then I came back about a year later, and then I started work at Hillsdale College. Now, Hillsdale College was a unique opportunity. Here I was a mother and married, and I'm going to Hillsdale College. Not only am I taking classes to getting a master's degree, but I also was a teacher. So apparently I had some good training at Benzonia Academy, and it was a delightful experience. I don't know what has happened to the music, but I am going to move this forward if you'll permit me one moment of modern. I feel a bit like Doctor Who. We'll see what happens here. A microphone message is supposed to be coming on. Here she is. Hello, hello, off to another election feat. And yes, widowed at 60, presented me with a lot of time on my hands. I served 2 terms at the Board of Trustees for Michigan Agricultural College. And Michigan Agricultural College, I was the first woman, as I may have mentioned to you before, I was the first woman in the nation to serve on the Board of Trustees, to be elected to this position. And that was wonderful, 12 years of serving, and I had a wonderful time serving on that. other thing that I did, started my degree in sociology, but I had a slight problem with a diabetic condition, and there was something else luring me away from the hallowed halls of Michigan Agricultural College. My constituents saw me as being a state legislator. So I served for several terms in the state legislature. Can you imagine that? A woman like me from Little Lemon Lake becoming a state legislator term after term. It has been a wonderful experience. And when I served in the legislature, in beginning when I was a sunshine lady over WKIR in East Lansing, I used to work on the radio as the sunshine lady. So my stories and poems that I wrote for the Grange once again came to the fore. But I also worked on giving people the story of why they needed to vote for me again and again and again, and they did. It was a marvelous opportunity to work on several great legislative items. I love being a servant for the people of the state of Michigan. Oh, I know a lot of people will say, oh, they just say that to get the vote. But that was my job. Francis and I, early in our marriage, decided that I should pursue what I was gifted with, the gift of voice, the gift of thought, the gift of writing. I had been a Grange writer for years, writing in the Michigan Patron, what they called in those days the Grange organ, and it was a mouthpiece for farmers. And you can see samples of my doctoral dissertation that I had started and never finished. As I say, it was called away by the legislature. But it certainly was an amazing time for me to be at work. Now, I wrote hymns, I wrote religious poems, I wrote songs and stories for young people, for old people, but I never gave up on the farm family. One of the most interesting aspects of working with farm families is to see how you could broaden the scope, even by having a picture of a boat with water, to aspire young people to greatness, to see that they needed to get education. When I was at Michigan Agricultural College, I broadened the scope, bringing the liberal arts program in. I helped dig that shovel full of dirt at what is now the Union Hall there. And at that time, I was living in East Lansing, and it was a marvelous experience. I attended People's Church in East Lansing when I lived there, and it was just a great time. Now, and look, that is really the most wonderful thing about the work of the Grange, my life, and I was so pleased to learn that I would one day be inducted in the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame, because it certainly was not the predominant party, because all my life I was a Republican. And so it was kind of hard to get in. And I really felt that science, agriculture, and education were the strongest elements that a person could use when they were developing. Now, reporters today have asked me if I plan to run I've been at the state capitol for 4 terms. Well, in those days it was only 2 years a term, and maybe we should go for that again. But you sent me to the Capitol 4 terms, and I've never been shy about my age. I am 74 years old, and I have done my very best to make my place in the world a little better than when I found it. Francis and I always had that as our mission in life, that we wanted to improve the life, our life, the life of others. Accordingly, therefore, I will no longer seek public office. It's time for me to say good night and goodbye.